welcome to our webinar on blockchain technology. So I'm Lisa Anderson, and I'm president of LMA Consulting Group, and I'm also a sponsor for this webinar. I'm also president of Apex Inland Empire Chapter, now known as the Association for Supply Chain Management, or ASCM. We've been doing an emerging with supply chain strength webinar series this year, and we've had some really great conversations, and we're looking to keep this going because there's a lot going on in supply chain and operations with our manufacturing and distribution and logistics clients, and we want to make sure that we're providing significant value to you all. So with that said, I'm going to introduce our speaker today. It's Jane Tierney, and Jane founded Purple Link in 2015, recognizing that there's a better way to obtain value and achieve results from and through the supply chain. Clients discover innovative ways to identify waste and risk that leak dollars from the supply chain, draining the bottom line. Through collaboration with stakeholders and suppliers, Purple Link's approach reduces both cost and risk and provides tools for clients to sustain savings year over year. Jane has earned a degree in industrial engineering from the University of Missouri and an MBA from San Diego State University. She's passionate about Lean and Six Sigma. She's a certified Green Belt, so definitely in our passion here at ASCM and Apex. She's also a certified professional supply chain manager and a certified professional in supplier delivery through the Institute of Supply Management. And I know Jane has been very involved in ISM over the years. In addition to running her business, she teaches operations and supply chain management courses at both Cal State University Northridge and Long Beach, where she serves as an advisory board member on the Cal State Long Beach Operations and Supply Chain Management Program. And in 2020, she co-founded the SoCal SCRM Council for local executives focused on supply chain risk management and holds an annual supply chain risk symposium. So as a speaker and author, she offers bi-monthly dynamic dialogue webinars and conducts workshops on a variety of topics. And her first book is due out in 2021. That's very exciting. So with that said, we'd like to turn this over to Jane. As you have questions throughout, please put them in the chat in the Q&A box, and I will monitor them and intersperse them throughout the presentation. And Jane, we're looking forward to it. So kick us off with blockchain technology.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm really happy to be here with ASCM IE and guests. It's a great time to be in supply chain and looking at all of these challenges. So I'm going to talk about blockchain, and this is kind of what a lot of people think when they think about blockchain. You kind of see giant Legos and some chain links putting everything together and wondering how that works. That's not exactly what it is. So stick around and maybe we'll clear up a few of those misconceptions. So I don't have a poll set up in Zoom, but I'm going to ask a couple questions, and maybe you can put some yeses in the chat. So how many of you are familiar with blockchain technology? You can put yes in the chat, or you can raise your hand, or those kinds of things. So it looks like a few of you are. Yeah, that's good. How many of you have used blockchain technology or tried it out in some concept, some application in your business or a demo? That's what I'm seeing is a lot of people have not really used it or tried it out. How many of you think you're going to use it in the next, I'll just add these two questions together, in the next couple of years, in the next, say, 2 to 5 years? Do you think that's coming your way through your work or whatever? Yeah. A lot of you think that it's in your future, and I imagine it is. It has a lot of different applications. So thanks for your participation in that. So let's kind of jump right in. I want to stay connected to all of you because I'm really happy to see a lot of good participants today. I'm going to give a prize away at the end. So if you want to participate in the prizes, you need to send me an email to jane@purplelink.co, put in the subject line webinar, and get into the prize drawing. And then we'll kind of do that at the end. And if you're not sure right now that you're quite ready to do that, I'll give you another chance at the end before I actually make the drawing. So here's what we're going to cover. Pretty basic stuff. We're going to look at the definition of what blockchain is. We're going to talk about some applications, look at components, and then we're going to actually look at a couple examples. I've got a really quick video at the end I'll show you, and then we'll give away the prizes. So stick around for that. So at its core, a blockchain is really just a database. It helps us store information electronically. It's structured much like an Excel spreadsheet. It's a table format. It's got rows and columns, but it's like a spreadsheet on lots of steroids because it's not a spreadsheet. It's a database. So it's more aligned to some of the other databases that you might have used, maybe macros that you've done, different kinds of things. Because spreadsheets are really for single users and for small groups. And they're very powerful. Lord knows I live on Excel. I'm doing things all the time with different clients on Excel. Even for myself and my own business, I put a lot of things on Excel, do my KPIs and things like that. But blockchain is more than a spreadsheet. It's a database, and it's a database that's intended to house an awful lot of information. A lot of data is possible to put in the blockchain. But the idea there is that not only is it a database, but it's a database that can be accessed, filtered, and manipulated by not one or two people, but by lots and lots and lots of users. Although all those users need to be part of an approved access list. So that's not just for anybody and everybody. It's not open source code, but it is designed to have multiple users on it. The way it works is it takes all of the info or the data and it puts it into groups or chunks. These things are then structured into tables because the database structure are a lot of different tables. And keep in mind that all blockchains are databases, but not all databases are blockchains or have blockchain capability. So that makes it all clear, right? I'm sure. So there's a lot of things that go into blockchain. So let's just kind of dive in. So the definition basically starts with the things that we're putting into this database. And that is, we're looking at assets. And we're looking at, so an asset is something that's tangible. We're looking at things like houses, cars, cash, land. We're also looking at things like intangible assets, intellectual property, which is a big use for blockchain, patents, copyrights, branding kinds of information. So all of these things go in there. Blockchain is a specific type of database in the way that it stores this information in blocks that are all connected, all accessible through many different connections in the database. When we enter in new information, we create a fresh block. Once we put data in that block, it's chained or linked to the previous block. So everything is stored sequentially, chronologically. Different types of information can be stored in the blockchain, but the most common use is really just as a ledger for lots and lots of transactions. So blockchain helps us, gives us a process to record all of the transactions and track all of your assets throughout the business network that you have. You can track almost anything of value, and that's why blockchain is used a lot in Bitcoin kinds of things. It is not Bitcoin, but it is definitely an enabler to Bitcoin. And that's why a lot of organizations use them in conjunction with each other. But the other thing that's good about blockchain is it really does reduce the risk. And we'll show you how, and just as we get through a few more of these slides. And so when it reduced risks, that's a really good thing, but it also reduces costs. And we'll talk about how it reduces costs for organizations that participate as well. So this picture might help you understand a little bit more about how blockchain works. If you look at the cube on the left, it starts with this small record. So this is when we create a new piece of information or a new piece of data that we're going to put into the blockchain. So this could be a single transaction. This could be recording that the date, the time, the transaction between two parties, or data was moved from point A to point B. Whatever that is, that information is recorded into a single block. Now, all the blocks are linked to other blocks, and you can see that in that middle section where you've got a lot of blocks all kind of laid out. So they're all linked to each other until they form this chain. And then the blocks linking together even further becomes this chain, which is the picture on the far right. And you can see this is kind of rolling everything up to keep the space fairly small. And this is not actually what happens, but kind of this gives you a picture, a visual of how all these things can be linked together. So any piece of data in the blockchain links to every other piece of data in the blockchain. So again, you may have heard blockchain and Bitcoin in the same sentence or the conversations, but they're not the same. In regards to Bitcoin, blockchain is used in a decentralized way. So no single person or group has control, and yet all users retain control. So it's a very important part of Bitcoin to help make sure that all users are still in some kind of control, but it can't get delegated or focused into one single person or one single group. We talk about these blocks of data being immutable, and that word means that the data entered is really irreversible. It can't be removed. It can be changed, it can be updated, but it can't be removed. And all changes retain that visibility to all users. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we show this, all of these transactions, all of these assets that are visible by everyone. So the block of data recorded includes the who, what, where, when, why, how, all of that information that you want around that particular transaction, that particular asset, whatever the item is that you're recording. So blocks are connected to those before and after them. That's why we get the chain in there. They form a chain of data, and they're stored chronologically. Again, what happens first gets recorded first. So the blocks really have the ability to confirm the exact time and the sequence of transactions that happens. So the blocks are really secure in that they are not, they're immutable. So you can't change those. You can't have a block that's altered in any way, and that chain cannot be broken. So the question is, what happens when you make a mistake? If you make a mistake in an immutable chain, what you have to do is correct it. But you can go in and make that correction, but you also have the secure information of being visible to everybody. So if you were going to type that you had 600 pieces of intellectual property, but you only put 60 down, then you say, oh, I made a mistake, it's 600. You can go back and actually change that. But that original entry, that erroneous entry of 60 is going to be there. And your follow-up to that is going to say you're changing and revising the information that was inserted earlier because that was incorrect. So not only will people see the revised corrected version, but they're going to see that that mistake was made. And that's important to track that for security because, again, things can't be altered. Things can't be changed without the entire network having the visibility of what occurred there. So these blocks, these transactions now are in this irreversible chain. And each of these pieces of information strengthen each other, and they make that entire chain stronger. So it gives us a tamper evident record of all the things that happen. So you can't tamper with this because it doesn't allow you to erase or remove anything. So it creates a network, it creates a database that can be trusted by everyone because nothing can be altered, changed without everyone seeing what that change actually was, what the before and the after is and was, so that there's no question about what was done. And you can say, hey, I made an error, because we all make errors. But again, it doesn't allow you to erase or remove once you say, yes, that information is correct, and you add it to there. So there's 3 different elements that are the key elements of blockchain. We talk about this ledger technology. So the first is that it's a distributed ledger. So changes are made to participants in a matter of seconds, perhaps minutes at the most, but generally it's a real time and it's very fast. Distributed ledgers are fairly new, and most companies used centralized ledgers. But these are more prone to cyber attacks and fraud because they have a single point of failure. So these distributed ledgers mean there are ledgers in multiple locations that all get copied at the same time. And so to hack that or to change that, you'd have to get to all of those ledgers simultaneously for the attack to be successful. Because again, once that information is stored, it becomes immutable. And I see a question, is there a restriction on who can make a change? Yes, it's restricted to people who have access to the network. And that has to be an approved group of people that have that. So only people with specific access. And that's the idea here. If someone could hack into the network and make that change, again, you'd have to change all of those distributed ledgers at the same time simultaneously for that attack to be successful. And that's going to be very, very difficult to do, the way that the distributed ledgers are set up. So they're shared consensually, they're synchronized, and they can be across multiple sites, multiple institutions, multiple geographies, and multiple people. So again, it's a good fit with Bitcoin, with people all over the world trying to get into the Bitcoin world. There are cryptographic signatures required, so there is encryption, and there's a lot of security on that. And if you do make a change, these additions that are, as I said before, are copied and they're visible by all the participants. So it has to be a network of people who are approved to go in there. And if something did happen, all of these ledgers, which are not centralized as most companies have a primary database where you can go in. A few people have access to that, but it's stored in one location. With blockchain, it's stored in multiple locations because part of the blockchain technology replicates whatever is done. As soon as that one transaction or that one addition, that additional block is added in there, then everyone can see it in multiple sites all at once. So the properties of this distributed ledger are very important. One is it's programmable, so that you have all of these pieces in there that you can program, and it's connected to smart contracts, and we'll talk about those. The distribution, again, all the approved network participants have a copy of this at their fingertips for that transparency. Again, it's immutable. You can't change or reverse records as you can do in a lot of other types of databases or ledgers. There's a timestamp on there, so it tells you exactly what time it was done. So there's no question, and you can't predate or postdate things. It's done real time. Then there are lots of requirements for participants to join and to validate each of the participants. So that's important. But yet those participants remain anonymous. They may have pseudonyms, that they may have like handles that you use, kind of thing. But in general, those identity of every participant in there is anonymous. So you can't look at that and say, oh, I'm going to call Bob and ask him about XYZ. It doesn't work that way. So everything is encrypted, everything is very secure, and it builds over time as the different participants create things and need different things and are visible. Some people don't do many transactions, they do more visualizing, they do more checking on that information, but it's all in that same place. So the second key element is that you have this immutable record of transactions. So these transactions are paperless, they're recorded only one time. And so you don't have to duplicate the efforts that you need to do to copy and paste or to link things within maybe an Access database or an Excel spreadsheet. So it's different from the typical traditional business networks. It's really easy to follow, and the audit trail is very clear, and it helps reduce the fraud and improves security because you don't have all these extra steps in duplication of effort in the centralized location. So these immutable records really are easy to track because the timestamp is there on everything that's done. So you can tell exactly when something is done, even if it's done in two places and there's a similar transaction put in, you can tell which one was first, and it allows you to trace back through. So that audit trail is really transparent. With these immutable records, no participant can change or tamper with any transaction after it's been recorded. So it has the opportunity when you're creating the transaction to review it, but then once you share it, once you say, yes, record it, then it's in there. So it doesn't mean that everything you type in automatically gets put into the system. There is actually kind of a load command where you actually add it to the chain, to the whole database. But after that's done, then it's all transparent. So you can, if you do find an error, and again, people make errors, you can go in and reverse that error. But then the original error is there, and the fix is also visible to everyone else in the blockchain participant list. The final element is smart contracts. So these smart contracts are stored on the blockchain and executed, and this is part of what's programmed into the programmable part of the blockchain. So these smart contracts define conditions for things like corporate bond transfers, for travel insurance, things to be paid automatically. And again, Bitcoin goes into this. So this smart transaction will tell you if there's like processing fees, handling fees that need to be added to every transaction, if there are extra requirements over and above like taxes and things like that. So these smart contracts define all the conditions that are needed within that particular blockchain for those particular parties that are involved in that. So we all know that businesses run on information, and not just data, but information. So we're trying to get as much information as we can into the database so that it helps all the participants. So I see another question. How many distributed ledgers are there? It's really one basic ledger per blockchain setup. Everything is in that ledger. Who determines that? All of the participants of that blockchain, whoever's creating that. How many should you have to have confidence that the data cannot be corrupted? Again, it's up to the people that are in that network, and you can put as much information as you want in there so everyone can see that. So the method that says the confidence level is based on the structure that you have of the database itself, the participant screening process that you have to allow people to have access for that. I'm not sure if I answered all those questions. If not, you can ask again via the chat, or you can ask me at the end. But again, we're looking at the information that companies need and businesses need to run and conduct their business on an ongoing basis. So we all know that we need accurate data, accurate information. And the faster that we can transmit that to the parties that need that, the better off the company's going to be, and the better off we're going to be able to run that company. So blockchain really helps because it provides this immediate, shared, transparent information. On this ledger, again, it's a single ledger. Now you can make some subsets of that, and you can manipulate the data to do some analysis on that. But that immutable ledger includes everything in there. And you have to have permission to be a member. And once you get that permission, you can see everything on there. And because members are all seeing the same thing at the same time, it really helps see those transactions from end to end. You see those accumulate from one to the other. Gives you greater confidence in the information. You get a lot of efficiency and opportunity in being able to see that all in one place, real time, without having to replicate. It's almost like an example is like point of sale information, when you can see what was sold, and yet everyone through the entire supply chain can see that almost instantaneously once that transaction is completed. If the connections are put there, that's how it's set up. So blockchains are used to track orders, to make payments, to manage accounts, to look at production. So many different aspects of this are possible because of the power of the blockchain. So a lot of companies are saying, and you told me this in the chat early on, we're not using this, but we're interested in, we'd like to use it. What are some of the things that have made companies make this investment and get to the point where they're actually using blockchain? One is they recognize that there are wasted efforts duplicating all of the record keeping that you have to do, and validating with third parties what's been done, what needs to have happened, and to check someone else's work. So that's one of the issues. It's, again, the fraud, the cyber attacks that we've seen, especially, the ransomware and things like that, that makes people lean toward getting something like a blockchain, which is much harder to hack because of all of the distributed ledgers and all of the multiple points that you would have to hack at once to actually get into there, or to make transactions to. With the Internet of Things, the volumes of transactions that are done have really exploded and are as mind-boggling as they've ever been. So we're trying to make sure that we manage the risk, the things that can slow down your business, the things that detract from your bottom line. So blockchain is one way to do that. It's not the ultimate answer, but it is a very powerful tool. So here's some applications that might help you see how companies are actually utilizing blockchain today. Medical data is one way. So if you think about with the pandemic, this has been incredible. And I recently went to the doctor to try to get just a physical and get some basic testing done, all that kind of thing that they tell you need to do every year. And it's amazing the things that they have. Now, blockchain wasn't around when I was a kid and I had my tonsils out and I did all these things. But it's possible to put all of that information into a blockchain format so that instantaneously doctors can see that, yes, I had my tonsils out, and yes, I had the mumps and this and that and the other, all of those kinds of things. It's easier for companies to see and for medical professionals to do that. So that medical data is very important. For me, I think I've had mumps and measles and whatever, but I can't necessarily remember that. And my mother was the keeper of all that information, and she's no longer around. So anything like that has very powerful applications going forward for all of us. There are privacy issues as well, but that can be managed with the blockchain too, because you can give permission to certain people. And if you don't give that permission out, then your piece of that blockchain is not going to be visible. The NFT marketplaces, this is not an area that I know a lot about, this Bitcoin, but these things and these NFTs is an area that's coming up, and we're seeing blockchain enable some of that and be able to track those transactions. Another application is music royalties. This has been a hot button in the music industry for a long time. It's also applicable to watching movies, streamed movies through applications that we have a myriad of: Hulu, Prime, Amazon Prime, Netflix, multiple things, and other ways to stream that aren't tracked through main companies like that are supposed to be tracking and paying the royalties to the people that have contracts to get those. This is a very good technology to use across borders because, again, it's not subject to anything except who has access to it, but you can put smart contracts in there to talk about duties and customs and different types of activity that has to happen if you're transferring goods and cash, and you can put limits on cash and things like that. Again, the Internet of Things is a big partner to blockchain. Your personal identity, so that you're not opening it up to everyone, and yet people are getting more access to things so that you're not having to fill things out 15 times. Every time you go to the doctor, it seems like that you get the same set of questions you have to answer. If you have blockchain technology, you can put that in there once and it can be accessible, and you can recreate it too. You can access it and give it to other companies. I worked in defense and aerospace, and things like ITAR, a lot of the registrations. I happen to have a small business registration. All of the information there I have to submit, and I'm in the process of doing that right now for my women-owned business certification. And oh my gosh, and you have to do it. If you have multiple certifications, you have to pull that same information and send it to different sites. If this was all on blockchain, once you put it in there, it would be available, and it would automatically go to those places and populate the people that need to see that to verify that, yes, I did my taxes and it's in there, and I updated my business license and all those things. So it really helps prevent things like money laundering. It helps monitor the supply chain from tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers through distributors and retailers and on to the ultimate customer. Voting it can help with. The original content creation, where you have intellectual property and you have proprietary confidential kinds of information. Cryptocurrency we talked about a little bit, and then also real estate processing through there. So there's so many applications. This is just a few that have started being used by a number of people.
So
the
Jane,
real benefits.
did you see
Yes.
Mohammed's question? Can you be selective about what information you can reveal to selected parties?
So depending on how it's set up, yes, you can make certain things available. Like employers, if you wanted to track your employment record, you can make that available to people, but you would have to authorize that to be entered into the blockchain so you could scrub that information before you actually submit it. But you have to look at who's connected and how they're connected. Thanks, Lisa, for pointing that out.
Sure, no problem.
The blockchain is really about building networks and ledgers and a database that people have access to, that the anonymity of people is protected, and yet it's very easy to share information. So you preserve the confidentiality, but you are also able to spread that information very quickly in a timely fashion. But it is a members only network. Each blockchain itself has to have approved members on it. The security is much better in large part due to that distributed ledger technology, which lets you have not one centralized ledger, but multiple ones, so that it's harder to hack into, plus the encryption that you can put into it. And the fact that nothing can be deleted out of the blockchain. Nothing is, you can change and make revisions that way, but you can't delete or erase. And it's really very efficient because these data ledgers are shared by the members. They have access to them, and you can put multiple users on for your company, for your home, for your family, however you want to do that. And then these smart contracts are stored and are able to be executed automatically, so you don't have to tell it to do things all the time. You don't have to remember those things. You program that in. So Kroger, which is Ralph's out here for us, has started using blockchain for food traceability. And it seems like every couple of months we see something that's been recalled, whether it's chicken or strawberries or what. So they have implemented this to look at what produce or what foods are made and what exactly needs to be pulled in case of recalls. So if you think about this, when they talk about maybe chicken nuggets being a problem or a potential problem, every store, every place starts to pull all of that, and that all ends up all being not able to be sold. What Kroger and Ralph's are trying to do is to really be able to track that specifically and say, this product is not affected, this product is affected. So that's going to help them lose less when they do have recalls. And it's also going to help them get that information to consumers much more quickly in that area where that product was actually sent. So it's a big undertaking, but it's a powerful tool to use if you're Kroger trying to make sure that you don't have more scrap than you need. InBlock is a Metacoin cryptocurrency kind of thing. They use it for their transactions because they find them to be safer and much faster. And faster, of course, today is always better. We're looking for the blockchain to help us identify and track conflict minerals. If you're a publicly traded company and you've been dealing with the conflict mineral, the Dodd-Frank Act, this is a very onerous piece of legislation to try to track all of that. When people ask me, why is it such a hard thing to do? And I say, well, look at your phone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone, and tell me where the gold contact metal inside your phone came from. And that's really what they're trying to do with conflict minerals. And I applaud the idea of limiting the amounts of money we get to conflict countries and conflict organizations, but it's a very difficult thing to do for a company. And I know, having worked in the corporate arena when this law was first enacted, it's a real challenge. And there's a lot of challenges to the law because of the difficulty in implementing that. So it's a way to do that as well. Plastic Bank is looking at plastic pollution in the ocean. They're trying to monetize the plastic and recycle more of that. So it's a really powerful tool that can be used and that companies are using. So this, let's see if we can try this and I can make this work. I'm going to have to stop this there.
Always something, right?
It's always something. This is really only 1.5 minutes long. Oh, this is not the right one. Let's see.
No problem. We're all familiar. We're all in operations and supply chain. So the definition is to be resilient as things come up, right?
This doesn't look like the right one either. Maybe this is an ad. Skip ads. There we go. Okay. Now let me share this. Can you see that now?
I can see it. Yep.
Okay, let's try this.
Contracts can transform supply chains. Let's imagine you decide to purchase a new computer. However, in this case, let's also imagine you're concerned about the working conditions in the factory where the computer was assembled. Or maybe you have a concern about the quality of a specific component inside the computer. Right now, there's no easy way to check where your computer came from and how it got made. The complex web of relationships that provide the materials, manufacture the components, assemble the parts, and deliver the computer to market is known as the supply chain. Hundreds of years ago, supply chains were fairly simple. Mines and farms provided natural resources to skilled craftsmen, like blacksmiths and tailors, who then created and sold finished products. Today's supply chains are much more complicated, fragmented, and difficult to understand. Hundreds or even thousands of suppliers all around the world contribute to make and ship the computer you just purchased. Most of the time, the various companies don't know about each other, and as a consumer, you likely don't know anything about how, where, when, or under what conditions your computer was made. This isn't just a problem for consumers. Today's supply chains are so complex that even Apple, Dell, or HP has difficulty tracking how their computers get made. Smart contracts could make supply chain management simpler and more transparent. The idea is to create a single source of information about products in a supply chain via a global ledger. Each component would have its own entry on the blockchain that gets tracked over time. Authorized companies could then update the status of a component in real time. The end result is once you receive your computer, you could track every component back to its manufacturer. Theoretically, you could trace the supply chain all the way back to the mines where the raw materials came from. Companies can also use the blockchain supply chain as a single source of truth for their products. They can manage and monitor risks within the supply chain, ensure quality of delivered parts, and track delivery status of orders. Additionally, companies can use smart contracts to manage and pay for supply chains autonomously. For example, a chip manufacturer could be paid immediately upon testing of each individual chip at the assembly facility. This would reduce the need for large contract invoices and the back and forth of refund requests for faulty components. Those same smart contracts could assist with shipping and logistics, tracking valuable products as they travel around the world. Using blockchain, companies can finally have a complete picture of their products at every stage in the supply chain, bringing transparency to the production process while reducing the cost of manufactured goods.
So there's a quick example of what you might be able to do with that. And if I can find this to share back my screen. There's the Zoom.
There you go. It's work. Well, that's a good thing.
How about that?
Let's see. And there's a question while you're looking for it from John. Hi, John.
Okay.
He says, I assume blockchain can create a black box to protect IP, such as Coca-Cola's secret recipe for its flagship product.
Yes, I would assume that too. Again, it limits who has access to different things. So you have to set it up that way, but however you set it up, it can work. Can you see my slides again?
Yep, we can.
Okay. So what I know for sure is that there is a better way to manage the supply chain. And I think that video was a kind of a glimpse into what can happen. Things like talked about like conflict minerals. This is just talking about computers and tracking the individual components in there. But it's kind of telling when they say HP and Dell and Apple still have trouble tracking things that go into their products. So blockchain would enable us to manage the supply chain better. So blockchain, I think, is a really key tool for the future. It's at once both very simple and very complex. Simple because there's these three elements: the digitized ledgers, the immutable records, and the smart contracts. And I guess the fourth element of that is the very proprietary nature of who can join that network. It's secure, much more secure. And when we look at some of the things, again, that companies have experienced recently in terms of ransomware and hacking, it's much preferable to have that security built in from the start. We see that Walmart and Visa are using blockchain, and more companies every month are adopting blockchain in some form. We're seeing the government, cybersecurity, banking industry, a lot of supply chain management things, and then healthcare. So I'm confident that many of you are going to be seeing this in your own workplace very soon. So that's what I have today. And if you would like to talk more with me about blockchain or some of the potential, you do need a company to help you implement blockchain. This isn't something that you can just pull your team together and say, we're going to start this. So IBM has been on the forefront of this. They have a lot of the software basis that you need to start this, but there are other companies coming and a lot more companies adopting this. So you'll see that you need a partner in this, but you also need to have that vision. So if you'd like to talk to me more about that or anything else to do with supply chain, that would be great. I'm always happy to talk to anybody. So you can schedule a free call with me at callwithjane.com. And if you schedule by the end of today, you're going to receive slides from this presentation and a subscription to my webinar. So that'll take you right to my calendar, and you can set up a half-hour free call with me. So if you didn't already and you'd like to be involved in the prize giving, then it's time to send me that email. So send me to jane@purplelink.co. And if you send that right now, I'll give you about 30 more seconds, and I'm going to pull out my random number generator here and see how many people that I have. If you win today, you're going to win the slides. And in fact, if you send me the email, I'll send you the slides in the next 24 hours, very shortly. And
now, Jane, can we ask, I think I see another question. Is it okay to ask you a question while you're doing it? So Freddie is asking, if there was a change in supplier, the information will still be there for traceability purposes. However, can you remove the user from accessing it all if one is no longer dealing with that particular supplier?
The way I understand it is it would still be available by those parties that were involved in that business deal. So both the seller and the customer would have access to what they did. But if you chose not to send them anything in the future, then it would be, nothing would be removed, but there's nothing additional for them to see. So example, if you disqualified one supplier and chose another one, they couldn't see the new supplier because they weren't authorized to see that. So you could block that at that point.
Very good.
Okay, so let me just see now who we have. So I'll give you like 30 more seconds while I'm counting and getting this random number generator, which is a really cool tool on my phone. And that makes the winner Federico Garcia.
Very good.
Federico, are you on? Are you still here?
He's there. He responded,
okay.
Yes.
Great. So Federico, what you need to do is you need to send me another email with an address where I can send you the book. So Federico's going to win the slides, this book, which is a great book. If you haven't read it, Measure What Matters by John Doerr. He did a lot of work, and he talks about not KPIs, but oh, I can't think of the acronym now. But it's very interesting, and he's worked with companies like Google and things like that. So it's a well-received book and very popular there. So
very good.
Thank you. And I've got one more slide because I always like to leave you with something, strive to thrive. So blockchain provides supply chain capabilities that were not possible. This comes from David Waters, who is a director at STERIS, which is a leading provider of infection prevention and other procedural products and services focused primarily on healthcare. Their mission is we help customers create a healthier and safer world. So I think blockchain has a lot of potential. And I think we're going to all see more of that and learn actually how we can apply it in our own businesses very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely some fields like food and healthcare where I think it's gonna, continue to take off. So thank you very much to Jane for speaking to us today on blockchain. We very much appreciate it and our collaboration with ISM related, since that's where Jane and I originally met. And please stay tuned for our Emerging with Supply Chain Strength webinar series. Keep watching our website, and you're going to see that we're going to be adding in our October, which is Manufacturing Month, presentation shortly. So we'll be announcing that and sending out an email as well. So hopefully you will join us next month in our webinar. And we are also coordinating some future events with our students, since we have several student chapters that we've been working very closely with. And recently, welcome to Keck Institute, who has joined us as another student chapter. So please stay in touch with us at Apex Inland Empire, ASCM Inland Empire. Our website is apics-ie.org, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And thank you again to Jane.
Thank you for the opportunity. I wish you all a great week.